There's the general information. We talk about backwards design, and we'll also be discussing the course structure in that document as well. And that's something that we'll discuss in greater detail later on in the presentation. But for now, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Dees and let him discuss the project management side. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So like Terry said, before we take a look at the online course design plan and look at applying some of the principles to it, let's create a foundation for project management. So, and what I mean by that, to lay this foundation, we first want to answer the question of what is project management? You know, if you go on Google right now and Google project management, you will find out that there are a lot of models out there. There are a lot of steps, a lot of different things going on with project management. So we're going to take a look at 3 different definitions of what project management is. So according to the 2008 edition of the PMBOK guide, and if you're not familiar what the PMBOK guide is, it's the project management body of knowledge. This PMBOK guide defines project management as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So you're applying the knowledge, the skills, tools, and those techniques to the project activities to meet project requirements. But also it continues on to say that project management is accomplished through the application and integration of the project management processes of, you know, these are things that if you would Google project management, you would see these processes, and they're labeled like this. They're called initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So all those processes, the PMBOK guide in the 2008 editions define project management of that. But I mean, we also, we need to think about it. It's also important to mention that these processes does not fully capture the essence of project management. And like a lot of you know that have dealt with managing projects, project management, the science or the practice of that is very, very complex, and it has a lot of different facets to it. But much of project management consists of, and like I said, if you've ever managed projects, you know that a lot of project management consists of dealing with political issues. It also deals with trying to get team members to perform at their required level. And also, if you've been in this point in project management, you know that it's also about negotiating for or negotiations for scarce resources. So these activities are not really captured by the PMBOK guide processes that we just talked about. And no single document can do justice to the true complexity of project management. But we're going to try today to just give you a few things. Like I said, it's a complex practice, and we're just going to try to give you a few things that will help in your online course development. So a second attempt at let me try to advance that slide. Go to that next. There you go. The second attempt to answer the question of what is project management. It says that project management deals with tools, people, and processes, and I think everyone can agree to that, right? The tools that they're speaking of are the work breakdown structures. You've heard that word. The PERT, scheduling, things like earned value analysis, risk analysis, and scheduling software. And these are just a few that we've named. Usually tools are the primary focus of most organizations that want to implement project management. Tools are necessary, but they're not sufficient enough for success in managing projects. You know, a lot of times departments or organizations, they want to implement project management into their culture. So what they do is they go buy a tool, right? They go buy the shiniest tool that they can find. And does that make them successful in managing those projects? A lot of times, no, it does not make them successful, because if project management was just a tool, then everybody could do project management, right? But it's just not a tool. as we're seeing here. Project management also is also processes and systems and people. Processes or techniques are far more important, because if you do not employ the correct processes for managing, the tools will only help you document your failures with great precision. And so if you don't have the right processes in place and the techniques in place, and you don't have the right people in place, a software or a tool that you would use would only show you your failures to a greater precision. So that was the second attempt. So let's look at another way of trying to figure out what is project management. Next slide. So the third attempt to answer the question of what is project management comes from Dr. James P. Lewis. Dr. James P. Lewis is an electrical engineer turned project manager. He also is the person who developed all of NC State's project management certificate courses. So I've had the pleasure of being able to take some of those classes as professional development, and they are wonderful. And I have learned a lot. I have also learned that project management is not in a little small, neat little box. It's a vast, complex being. So in practice, but Dr. Lewis says that project management is facilitation of the planning, scheduling, and controlling of all activities that must be done to meet project objectives. And this is the definition that we're going to use today to apply to our online course development plan. Mr. Locklear, could you advance the slide one more time? So with that definition, once again, I'll read it out loud to you. Project management is facilitation of the planning, scheduling, and controlling of all activities that must be done to meet project objectives. So as you see, the next slide, we'll talk about facilitation. And so this is one of the first steps we want to look at when applying strategies to online course development is facilitation. So what is facilitation? First thing you need to know is that a project manager does not develop a project plan for the group. That's the first thing you need to know about project management, that they do not develop the plan for the group, right? That's not a project manager's job. But the general rule here that we want to look at in facilitation is that people that are required to do the work should participate in developing the plan. You know, that just makes sense, right? The people that are doing the work need to be at the table of sorts, you know, in another way of saying it. And there's two reasons for this. One reason is that they know best how they will do their own work and how long it will take. The person that's doing the work will know best how to do their own work and how long it will take. The second reason for this is that they are likely to think of everything that must be done. Whereas if you plan the project by yourself, you may forget something. So there's two reasons why facilitation is one of the parts of project management, because the people that are required to do the work should participate in developing the plan. So let me ask you a question real quick, and let me get some feedback from you in the chat box. If one part of project management is about facilitation, who do you think needs to be on the project team when developing online courses? So in the chat box, give me some people who you think needs to be on that project team. Another way of saying that is who are the stakeholders when developing an online course? Give me something in the chat box.
And if I can just add something here, Mr. Dees, if you don't mind. You know, a lot of times course development is done in a vacuum, but in some situations, and you know, when I say in a vacuum, I mean, you know, you as the faculty member are kind of developing that course on your own. But in some departments and in some situations, you have a team that develops courses. So let's think of it that way. So depending on your department, this answer is going to be different. But maybe even think about if you were developing if your program, if your online, if your academic program was going from face to face to online, who are some of those individuals that would need to be a part of this process? So that's another way that we can approach this subject as well.
Right. So Professor Adams said that peers can be beneficial during this process. I agree. I know first and foremost, the first person that needs to be there are the faculty, right? In this online course development process and doing it in a project management way and trying to come up with a project team. We know that the faculty need to be there. Also, someone like Mr. Locklear, him and Miss Kristen Purvis in our department, or the instructional designers need to be on that team, correct? If we're looking at online course development as a project, whatever course we're developing as a project, yes, I do want my instructional designers there. Also, faculty and or the instructional designers can take a project lead if they want, if you wanted them to, or if they wanted to project as a project lead. Also, a project manager might be a good person or stakeholder that would be in that part. Another one, let me give these to you. Assessment experts. What about digital media designers? And here's one, I see Professor Stroud on here today. Professor Arndt, Mr. Robert Arndt. Librarians is also a good person to have on that project team. Software engineers, programmers, and you might say, well, we don't need software engineers and programmers. Well, we call those people here, we call them do it, right? So anytime we're trying to come up with the online course, and just so happen we have the LMS already set up and everything, we probably don't need that much of a software engineer and programmer, but there's times that they would be a good asset to the team, project team, and also content developers. And there's a host of other people that you could put on that project team. So the first part, like we said, is facilitation. And the general rule there we want to remember is that the people that are required to do the work should participate in developing the plan. So the next thing we want to look at is next step to project management is project planning phase, the project planning phase. So before the project starts, you want to develop a plan with steps that will help you achieve the end results that you desire. So the principle that applies here is if you have no plan, you have no control. That's by definition, and we'll share that control definition later down in another few steps. In other words, and this is an old fable, old saying that we had back in my construction days. In other words, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you don't have a plan, as a second part of, we're using that as the second part of our project management role. You don't have a plan, you plan to fail. So one good thing about online course development here at UNCP is that there are very competent people in the Office of Online Learning, right? So who have already developed and have vetted an online course development plan. And that plan we can use today in our strategies here today that can be used to help us design online courses. So Mr. Terry Locklear has agreed to share that plan with us today. So Mr. Locklear, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dees. If you don't mind, I'm going to pause this share, and actually I'm going to pull up a PDF for you. For those of you, and I see some individuals in the room who have went through the community of practice or the COP program. For those that went through the COP program, this is going to be familiar. This document is going to be familiar. But for those that have not went through the COP, this is what we're sharing now is we call it the COP course design plan. And essentially what this is a multi-page document that kind of it can be used as a sort of a guide to guide you through the process of designing an online course. And what Gene has mentioned so far and what's been discussed so far is really a scenario that would work in a perfect world. If so right now this is April. Right now, if you were to learn today that you were going to be teaching a new or developing a new online course for maybe next fall or next spring, you could implement all of these wonderful strategies that Gene's talked about, forming the team and going through the process in a good way or in a very systematic way. In a perfect world, you would have enough time to do that. But, in reality, you may not find out you're going to be developing an online course until a few weeks before the semester starts, or a few days. It just depends on your department and situation. So if that's the case, then using something like this course design plan, if you're developing an online course sort of in a bubble or in a vacuum, kind of alone, it's you and Canvas, right? You can use this document as sort of a guide to facilitate that process. So the first part was just general information, your name and course name and population. This may seem sort of, you may want to know, like, why would you need to know the population? I think the population is almost as important as the delivery, the delivery method, because who your audience is going to really influence how it should influence, or it should really inform your course design and your delivery. Teaching a class to freshmen is very different than teaching a class of graduate students, right? So the approach has got to be there, not just the content, the way in which you approach it. Anyway, I'm going off on an instructional design sort of tangent, but in terms of project management, creating this sort of document from the beginning can guide, can really help in the long run. I've developed courses in the past, and if you've taught online for any length of time, I'm sure that some of you may have done the same. I've taught online classes in which I've sort of had to design those classes along the way. So like you find out at the last minute you're teaching, and maybe during the first week you're developing content for week 2 and 3. So if that's the case, then in my situation, always by the end of the course, I would think about, I wish I would have done this differently, thinking backwards. And that's where this second piece comes in. Go ahead and kind of storyboard all of this out from the beginning, and by doing that, if you have enough time, it really makes for a better experience for you and the students. So learning goals, it's, what it says here is this is aspirational, so not necessarily part of the course description or the official objectives. It's what would you like for these students to know, or what would you like them to leave this course with? It's kind of aspirational, so there's space for that. Course objectives or terminal objectives. Terminal objectives are course level, and most of the time, for those of you who haven't went through the community of practice, terminal objectives can typically be found in the course description. Evidences. So what are students going to produce to show that they have reached the objectives? And so it doesn't have to be 1, 2, and 3. It can be more, of course. These are just placeholders. You can go to 10, 15, whatever. And you're going to include also your learning activities and materials. And these should all align with, so this is, in terms of a hierarchy, learning goals is like top level hierarchy. Like these are, aspirational. So what's at the very, very top? I wish, my hope is that when students are successful in this course, they will be able to ABC, right? And then it goes to the basically the course description and down to the your assessments and activities. And this is, like I said, it's sort of a hierarchy. So it goes all the way from aspirational down to materials and activities that we're going to be implementing within this course to achieve those objectives, right? And the last piece is course structure. I'm not sure if there's an individual in here who has never taught an online course, but this course structure piece is really important because it's sort of going to shape how your course how your course is presented to students throughout the term. So if it's a 16-week course, are you going to do one module or lesson per week, or are you going to do 7 lessons or modules, so one every 2 weeks? So it's just kind of up to you to design how that looks to students from the outset. And then there's also the course outline. So it would go here. If you're going to do 15-week modules, you would have 15 of those. And then elements. So within that 1 week or within that 2-week module or lesson, what are we going to, what's going to be common among each one of those? So typically you can think a week would include maybe an introduction, you're going to list your objectives, readings, a discussion, if there's a PowerPoint, if there's some sort of online learning object that you would like them to do or participate in. So whatever a typical week looks like, we're going to list those here. And then your enabling learning objectives. So terminal objectives are, this is just sort of a side note that are going to be, you're going to list those here. You've got enabling learning objectives, and you've got terminal. So terminal objectives are course level, which is like the course description. And then you have enabling objectives. So those are going to be at the module level. So you've got course level, terminal objectives, and then you've got module or lesson level enabling objectives. So that's the way you can think about those. And then sort of these ancillary pieces. Think about participation, attendance, and grading, and that sort of thing. And all this aligns. So if you can produce this, or just take some time to sit down and produce this document. Think it out all the way through. On paper. I know it seems kind of counterintuitive because we're talking about the online world, but it may even help if you print it out and write it down. I think it greatly increases your chances of not getting to week 16 and thinking, I wish I would have changed this or that. I think it will result in a good experience for both you and the students. It's really an exercise of forecasting the way in which the semester is going to the way the course is going to be delivered. So I'm going to pause here and go back to the next section of the slide, and I'll ask Mr. Jean to talk about project control.
So up to this point, we've talked about facilitation and planning, right? Planning was the second part. Facilitation was the first. Remember, facilitation, we talked about the people that are required to do the work should participate in developing the plan. And then the second part, like I said, was planning. And just to put it real simple, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So the third part, and like I said, Dr. Lewis, that I had got this definition from, he has 16 different parts to his project management model. He has a flow chart. And I know you guys didn't want to go over 16 different parts. So I've kind of condensed the whole project management model into like 3 pieces. And I've added facilitation at the beginning. So the third part that we want to talk about is the control principle. And the control principle has this principle that says, compare where you are to where you are supposed to be. Any deviations require corrective action to be taken. So the control principle, the entire reason for managing a project is to make sure that you get the results desired by the organization. The entire reason that you are managing online course development is to get the course that you are seeking to develop, right? So what the definition that we talked about earlier about control is the act of comparing where you are to where you are supposed to be. So I tell you, I give you a scenario. I worked in the nuclear field at one time, and if anybody knows anything about nuclear work, everything, there's a book for everything. There's a process for everything, and there are what we call stops, work stops, or in this case, I'm gonna call them today control stops, right? So you get so much done, so many of these steps, like Mr. Locklear is talking about, you get so many of these steps done. You get to a certain step, and you can't go to the next step in the nuclear world. You can't go to the next step until someone signs off, says that yes, everything that you've done so far is correct. To me, in my mind, that's the way project control works. When you get to that point, when you get to that project control point, someone is going to take a look at what you've done and say, all right, you're where you're supposed to be, or you need to go back and take a look at this. Before you get to the end of the course or end of the online development, and you see where you're way off, you're nowhere where you need to be. It's good to put in these project controls, and we'll show you here in a schedule in schedule here in a minute what that would look like in a schedule. So the next thing, the fourth part that we're going to talk about today is project schedule, the fourth and the last part. So before I switch screens, I want to tell you some traits of a project schedule that you want to pay attention to when we go to looking at it in this software. Some of the traits are task, right? All these tasks that Mr. Locklear has talked about in their online course design plan. We're going to put these tasks into a Gantt chart, and within those tasks, each one of those tasks are going to be assigned to someone, right? A lot of times it's just the faculty that are doing a majority of these tasks. But if you all ever have the opportunity to change the culture of sorts about project management and able to get someone, to help with that, it might be that you can assign some tasks to other people, right? Also, some other traits of the project schedule are the status of each task. And those status can be new. It can be a new status. That task can be in progress. It can be completed. That task can be on hold, or it can be canceled. Those are statuses of task. Each task has a start date and a due date, right? Much like your goals that you set forth. What good is a goal if you don't put a start date and an end date, or at least a date, an end date to know, or to work towards, to know by this date I want to have this here goal done. Start date and end dates are traits of project schedule. And also with that comes along with the duration, which is how long each task will take to complete. So we want to share a different screen that takes us to a collaborative team-based project management software, and that's a lot, known as RIKE, WRIKE. We have been using RIKE in our department for the last year. And RIKE is a mammoth of a piece of software. I don't think it is as big as Microsoft Project. Microsoft Project is a mammoth of a software, but RIKE is also, but it has a lot of great qualities, that can be used. Mr. Locklear, make sure I'm sharing. Am I sharing correct? Yeah, I see. Okay, I got you.
Yes, looks good.
So in this software, I want to show you what the online course development plan that Mr. Locklear just shared with us, what it generally would look like as a Gantt chart. Here you see it as a Gantt chart. Like I said, you see the task. Remember, he mentioned the three overarching topics, which was general information. Here it was the backward design, and here is the course structure. So I can actually, expand these backward design and the course structure into all the different steps and things that processes that he spoke of. As you can tell, each task has a start date and a due date. So when I asked Mr. Locklear, I said, Mr. Locklear, how long would it take someone, a faculty member, to complete the online course design plan? He said 8 hours. 8 hours. And I was thinking from looking at what I was looking at, like that's a little that's pretty compact. That's very very, that it could be achieved. Don't get me wrong, but I felt like you guys would want some more time, so I broke everything down into like 1 day type increments, right? So the general information, as you see, as he explained earlier, I feel like you could do that in 1 day, right? Um, and then once you get their information done, here's the control stop that I was telling you about. So here's the control stop. So, and I'm using myself as the assignee or the person that is responsible for this task. So for the general information, I'm the faculty member here, right? So you see my name here as general information. So when I get to that point, that's when once I get my general information done, I might want to bring Mr. Locklear in as the instructional designer. So I assigned the control stop to him, as you can see his name here on the end. The second section that he talked about was backward design. And within backward design, it had all these subtasks here, learning goals, course learning objectives. And we give each one of those its own 1 day duration, or 1 day time. That's how much time you have to do that. And as you see how that plays out through um, the 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 dates. Now, if you look here at 416, also, and you can thank me later, I didn't require you to work on the weekends. This is just a 5-day work week. So once you got the course learning objectives done, you didn't have to do anything else till the 19th, which is on this assessments piece here. And then as you see how all that works out. So once I get to the backward design, I put another control stop in. Why do I want a control stop in there? Because I want to make sure I'm going in the direction I need to go. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to do that, to have, I know that will probably make Mr. Locklear's job, he give him more to do when you guys are calling and asking, hey, can you check over on my backward design and see if I'm going in the right direction? But in the long run, it wouldn't be a bad idea, because when you get down here to the bottom, you don't want to be completely in another hemisphere, right? When you're trying to do your online course design. So this is what a Gantt chart would look like with that online course design instilled into it. So like I said, Mr. Locklear give you 8 hours to do it in. I give you 2.5 weeks, and you can see that here in the chart here as it goes across 2.5 weeks. Okay, another version of this is also, you can look at it in a table. Here's the table view of it, and all it is, you could do this in a spreadsheet if you wanted to, and it's just taking all the different steps and putting them in a list, a table, and you're assigning people to be responsible for each task. And you have the statuses over here. Like I said, you have all these different statuses: new, in progress, completed, on hold, and cancel. You have all those in there. You have your start date, your due dates, and your durations also in those. And also another look of a schedule is, and I'm going to mess this name up, but it's called a Kanban board. Um, and all it is it's a card, a file card. And as I do my general information, I want to take that card and put it over here and say that I'm in progress doing that card. And then when I get it completed, I can push it to completed, right? And then I can put my control stop for that general information. I can put that in progress. So that's what and like I said, I'm not saying it correctly, but the Kanban board looks like. And the last uh, way or last tool that you could use for a schedule is just a generic list, where you just list things straight down. Um, Much like the spreadsheet or the table over here, I think I would rather have a table myself. Um, But like I said, the key attributes that we want to look at with a schedule that you want to keep in mind is you have a task. Each task has a start date, a stop date, or a start date and due date. It has it's assigned to a certain person, and it also has the durations. And one thing here with this software, you see the predecessors, and those are things that happen before and afterward. Not so much afterwards, but those are the things that happen before and afterwards. It's the dependencies, and if you see here for this control stop for the first one, the thing that comes before that predecesses the control stop is the general information, and the thing that is going to succeed it is the backward design. And you can set those up. So for instance, when you set those up like that, if say for instance, I can't complete this general information in one day and I need another day, when I add that due date, when that due date there changes, it automatically changes all these other dates too. So that's a good thing about having software like this here. So that's the project scheduling piece, and that, like I said, is the fourth part of our project management format or model. And like I said, this is a condensed version. It could be 16 different points if we wanted to, but I think this hits a little bit of everything. And there's like I said, it's very complex to practice, but that this is where we're at. So, Mr. Locklear, if you would go back to the. Let me stop sharing and you can go back to the PowerPoint. So one other thing to remember. So just as a wrap up, I just want to reiterate that the first part of the project management was the facilitation principle. Like we said, the people that are required to do the work should participate in developing the plan. That's as the wrap up. The second part of the project management was the planning principle. Like we said, if you have no plan, then you have no control by definition, right? You can't control what the end result is going to look like if you don't have a plan to get to that end result. And like I said, in other words, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You're already planning to fail right out the gate, right? The third part of project management definition that we were using from Dr. Lewis was the control principle. And this is where you compare where you are to where you are supposed to be. Any deviations require corrective action to be taken. And I add on to that, any deviations require corrective action to be taken before you can go on to the next point, right? Before you can go on to the next task. And the fourth part of project management was the scheduling principle, which is project management is not just scheduling. Like we said earlier in the presentation, if all project management was a tool, then everybody could do project management. But just these fancy software tools are not going to they're not going to create change the culture. If you can't get anyone, if I can assign a task to someone and they don't do it, what good is the software, right? How effective is the software? We've been more efficient, right? But it's not effective at all if the person the person in that scenario is not doing their part. So with that, we want to say thank you. I would like to say thank you for attending today. But at the same time, I have before you leave, if you would, I'm gonna put a link, a chat link, a survey, a link to a survey in there. It's just a 1-question survey. If you would give us some feedback on our session today. And then, like I said, we thank you for joining us.
Let me add something, Gene, if you don't mind. I also added the course design plan document, the one that I was showing. I added that in the chat, and I just wanted to also ask if anybody had any comments or questions. Do you think that using the design plan or applying project management principles, thinking about your past experiences with online course design, do you think this can be beneficial or can be helpful? I know that there's probably situations in which you can think of that you may have not had enough time to apply these, but in a perfect world, and if you have enough time, do you think that using this sort of plan can be beneficial to you? If anybody wants to share, I'd like to stop at this time and invite those questions or comments. And while you're thinking of those, I would like to share one example. I was a part of the I played a small role in the development of the online MBA, the new online MBA a few years ago, and a team came through and they sort of facilitated a process like this. You know, it was a program level sort of implementation, but I think the implementation, you know, given our short schedule at that time, went very, very well, you know, in getting all the stakeholders involved, and they sort of applied a project management strategy to the implementation of the MBA, and I think everything, you know, from my position, it went very, very smooth. It went very well, and it's still up and going today. So project management and online course development can work, and although that was a program level sort of implementation, they also do the same thing at the course level as well. You know, while they're working with you to develop, you know, new courses for the program, they apply a similar process in that realm. So thank you so much for your comments in the chat, and thank you so much for attending today. Jeannie and I's contact information is listed there, so feel free to reach out if there's anything we can help with. Thank you so much.